Hello guys, I'm here with Tim Beaudet to talk about the game dev grind. Tim has been someone I've been roughly acquainted with for I guess several years now. I ran into him a long time ago in some game jams, like, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago. I'm not sure. I was under a different name back then. He's a game developer. He recently released his first game on Steam. He also makes his own game engine. He live streams game development most weekdays, sometimes several hours at a time. And he also has work experience in the industry, like the game development industry in the past. So Tim, if you want, you can introduce yourself here and shout out anything you want.
Yeah, I'm Tim. I basically stream building a business, making racing games on twitch.tv/Tim Beaudet. And I give the ins and outs of doing games as a business, trying to do it as transparently as possible so that anyone wanting to chase that dream knows the challenges, risks, and don't just jump in without understanding all of the things involved.
Yeah, and you also have a YouTube video where you cover those topics as well, or well, YouTube channel where you cover
Yeah,
those
yeah, I do
topics
have
as
a
well.
YouTube channel where I'm covering a bunch of things about building games as a business, various things like how I pitched one of my games to publishers, making your own engine versus using one, the benefits of both of those choices. Um, and actually, my most recent video is me going full-time indie and the risks involved in that decision.
Yeah, I've watched a few of your videos. They're pretty good. Um, so yeah, you've streamed almost, well, it seems like almost every morning. And for a while, you had a full-time job, right?
Yeah, so for the last 4 years, I've been streaming every morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. before going to work. And just a few months ago, um, I've transitioned into making games full time for myself. And I've got a runway of about at least 3 years, maybe 4 years saved up, and hoping to make that be successful from now until then. It's a lot of money to be making to cover the cost
Yeah,
of living, but I
especially in the
think I have a
US.
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's some serious dedication to live streaming, though, with how much you do it. Does live streaming on a schedule help productivity by adding some accountability, or like, what do you think would happen if you didn't live stream? Does that help you a lot with getting things done?
Live streaming is something that certainly helped me in my adventure. I was very shy at it at first, but it added a pressure that you need to get stuff done. You always need to be like moving forward. You don't want to be just showing yourself kind of stuck um, and or slacking off, right? Like it does give you the accountability as well. I'm not a morning person. I really dislike waking up in the morning. That's probably surprising since I've been doing it for 4 years at 6 in the morning. But it, yeah, it gave me that accountability and that just a little bit of an extra push to get up, do my stuff, and make progress on my dreams. It also helps others understand the whole picture. Like I don't skip things in my stream. I
Yeah.
share the marketing, I share the business decisions, the hard things. Like I've canceled projects before that, I mean, that sucks, but you gotta pay attention to things where the money's going.
Yeah. I was a bit shy starting off streaming, although I got into it a bit early. I did some on Twitch when I was like 15 or whatever, and then I didn't do it again until, I don't know, a couple years ago, and I'm a little bit more comfortable with it now. Um, yeah. Uh, I do really appreciate how you show the whole process and what you do, because I actually do not do that quite. I show just about everything except for music composition, because I don't know. You mentioned making progress and stuff like that, and when I make music and stuff, I'm a bit uncomfortable streaming that because it's just kind of a mess, and I'm not making progress a lot of the times. I think showing the learning experience is good and stuff. It is kind of embarrassing, but
Yeah,
um,
definitely. I have that same problem when I'm making art. It just feels like such a struggle. Sometimes it's super frustrating because I don't know what I'm doing there. I'm just kind of trying things left and right, and you keep just trying things, and some things work and some things don't. And that's the process of learning.
yeah. So streaming has some upsides and downsides when you're working on games. So obviously you get the feedback from your viewers, which is amazing. It's probably one of the best parts of streaming, in my opinion. But there are downsides, like you have to take the time to set up your stream. You do have to take time out of, well, your time developing to interact with chat. And then there's other risks, like you have to be careful about what you show on screen because you don't want to accidentally pull up your tax documents.
Or show your master list of passwords. I haven't done that.
I keep those on paper, not my computer, so I'm not at risk for that.
Yeah, a window kind of moved where it wasn't supposed to one day, and that was, yeah, that was painful. There are definitely some downsides.
But how do you find that streaming affects your productivity in game development, like on an hourly basis?
I would say on average, it makes me significantly more productive. There are definitely times or even days where the chat interaction or even just the voice of chat will either distract me from what I was planning to do that day or just put you down into the gutters that you may not have been if you weren't streaming and live and all that stuff. But overall, it's generally positive. I've lots of people have come and offered their help. Like if I get stuck on something for even just a few minutes, sometimes people are like, "Hey, you've missed this little bit over here that you thought you changed," and it's like, "Oh yeah, you just go back and change that," and that saves so much time overall that I think it's far more productive when streaming. You do get those times, like I said, that people do just come in and the discussion changes a different direction, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think I've been challenged in ways that get my mind open to think about like all the possibilities and if I'm actually going to be making the right decision. Like that's part of how things have shifted in my adventure that I think have gone better.
Yeah, I've definitely had those circumstances where someone in the chat will actually, like, I'll just run into a problem and someone will point out what I did wrong or something. And it kind of amazes me that people are watching that closely and they're paying attention that closely enough to actually help in those circumstances.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
really cool. But yeah, one of the things with live streaming, though, like game development compared to normal live streams, is that the chat messages are so much more in depth. Usually, they're very long, and it's kind of hard to keep up with sometimes.
It can be. I think I've earned a reputation for not being able to read.
I feel like you've been doing pretty well with reading the chat, but
I do get that feedback as well. It's just there's days when you're really kind of in the zone and you're either missing the chat messages or you're glancing and you're reading a handful of words and just kind of guessing at what the rest of the sentence was without reading it completely. And that's where I get to the reputation for not being able to read correctly, or I just like fumble the words in my head. Um, but yeah, sometimes taking the time to answer some questions, they can get detailed and technical pretty quick. And that can take your time away. I think when I'm coding, I can handle doing those conversations even while coding. But if I'm doing something like art, I'm too focused on trying to learn something that it makes it a little bit harder to stay as active in chat. Like it winds up being a more, okay, let's interact with chat. Now let's go do the art. Now let's interact with chat rather than when I'm coding it. I can usually balance both.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that less experienced phase where I kind of have to go back and forth. But like for me, streaming I find has like probably 50% reduction in how much I get done on an hourly basis compared to like if I were to just work on my game by myself for a couple hours. But the cool thing about streaming is that it actually keeps you working on your game for that amount of time. Whereas if I were working by myself, I'd probably stop and take a break or something.
Yeah, I think that's part of where my productivity statement comes from with streaming. Like I would say I would probably hit most hours in the 80 to 90% effective if I was to do them alone, but I wouldn't necessarily be doing them alone. Like if I was off stream, it's so much harder to concentrate that I get like 10 minutes done and I get distracted and I don't realize I'm distracted until 2 hours later.
Yeah.
Whereas that doesn't happen on stream.
Yeah. So, considering all that, would you recommend that new game developers live stream their development if possible to get productive? Or
I think it depends a little bit on the personality of the person. I've definitely seen some people trying to stream when it was clear that that's not quite working for them. I think giving it a shot is definitely worth something. All
yeah,
you need is really a mic and the ability to talk while you're just say what you're thinking as you're going through it. You don't have to do much more than that. That's at least that's where I had started, is just saying what thoughts went through my head as I'm going through the process of something. Um, and talking it out loud can sometimes help you problem solve.
yeah,
It is really weird though. Like I'm not a social extroverted person that would be the life of the party or presenting to people, yet I present to people on a daily basis. Um,
I feel like
and it
that.
took a while to get comfortable with that.
Yeah, I feel like that's how a lot of the people that do this are. I don't know. At least that's the case for me. Um, yeah. So, you've actually worked in the game development industry, and then you went on to having a normal software engineering job while doing game development independently on the side, and then now you're full time indie. So you got a very wide range of experience. So, how did you first get into game development?
My introduction to game development was back in high school when I was in an advanced math class, and one of the students there taught me how to play with binary on paper. They came home after school and taught me a few lines of QBasic, which we just made guess a number. And
Hmm.
I knew basically that day that I wanted to become a programmer. And very soon after followed making games was the most interesting problem set to be programming in. So I spent the rest of high school making my own games the best I could, and then went to college through the industry for 5 years. And yeah, that's basically the story. I've always wanted to make my own games and make money from my own games. Like that's been there since high school.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
That's kind of my situation as well. Funny enough, one of the very first things I did was also guess the number, and I was just bored one day and learned Python, and then I decided I liked making games. It was funny because I started off when I was younger, years before I actually tried with Python. I used to think I wasn't smart enough to program, but it's I think like especially if you start on an easy language, it's surprisingly doable for a lot of people. But yeah. So how did you end up breaking into the game development industry and getting a job? Because I know that a lot of people start learning game development and they want to work for a company rather than going independent like you and I want to do.
Um, I think it I think it took a little bit of luck and a lot of persistence, really. I went to school for game design development at Full Sail University, and that was a great program, at least for me. I know some other people had different opinions on it, but for me, the program worked very well. It shined at getting me in and out the door and teaching me what I needed to know. Um, it was, however, very hard to find that first job because everyone wants 3 years minimum experience, and trying to get that first get your foot in the door was so challenging. It took almost a year to do that, and even regular jobs wouldn't pick me up because I was overqualified to work at McDonald's or any fast food joints or such. Like no one would hire me. It was such a
Huh.
rough period of life. And then when I finally did get the foot in the door, it was just a couple contract jobs that here's a couple weekend things to do, make a prototype for them. And then eventually I got my foot into a bigger door. And once that happened, it was fairly easy to go from job to job. But that did get pretty old fairly quick because what, every 9 months, maybe every 12 months, I'm on the hunt for the next job because that's what the game industry is like. It's you work on the game, it's done, you go to the next company. Like
Huh.
I know
Yeah.
other people have had different experiences where they get into either a bigger company or they just their career has a very different path than what mine was. But I kind of get tired of jumping and moving around the country everywhere just to chase these jobs. And so I found software and it kind of stabilized for me, allowed me to start packing up a savings account that is allowing me to go full-time indie. And I mean, I only have 3 or 4 years saved up. That might sound like a lot, but it's gonna go by very quickly.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I've been starting to get some of those emails from like small companies asking for me to prototype some stuff or make a couple mini games for them and stuff like that. But I'm not particularly interested in that. But I'm career wise, I'm aiming more towards just software engineering as my backup plan. If I can't go indie, I'm not really interested in working for the companies personally. But I know that many people are. And it's funny, in just software engineering as well, there's a lot of those jobs where they're entry level and they want 3 years. I was fortunate enough to get an internship early on that actually turned into a job, and I can actually probably go back to them whenever. But yeah, it's difficult to break into these things. So, what do you think are the upsides and downsides of working in the industry, and would you be willing to go back to that ever?
I think the upsides, at least for me, is having that creative programming outlet, and a full-time like a full-time job slash regular paycheck. That those would be the benefits
Yeah,
for me. And that it might be funny saying that, hey, there's a regular paycheck as far as being a positive, but it's stressful not knowing when you are going to get actual money coming in and you're watching the money go out of your savings account, which
yeah,
is a new thing for me, right? So that's what I would say is the positive side. You get to work on games, which is really fun. It is enjoyable. There's always like almost every team, actually every team I've been on has been a bunch of great people, and we've pushed through some serious stuff, and that's always been a great experience. But it's there are the negatives. You know, crunch time is a very real thing in my experience, and um, you know, searching for the next job every 9 to 12 months
uh,
gets old too.
what did the crunch time look like? Like, how many hours were you looking at a week?
It definitely depended on the company that I was at. The worst offender was basically for the entire length of the project. I'm talking like early alpha to gold ship. Was every night. We're there until 9 or 10 in the evening, most weekends, um, and at the end of that project when it shipped, I got home at 6 o'clock at night, and I felt something I never want anybody to feel was I'm home. What do I do now? 6 o'clock
Yeah.
is too early to go to bed. And that's all I had been doing after work is going to bed and then going back to work. And it was such a wake up call that, yeah, it was the weirdest feeling ever.
Yeah. Um, I'm hoping to stay out of the 9 to 5. I've been on the game dev grind for a bit, like hoping to avoid that, but then it does come with the own like the extra stresses of not having the regular paycheck. Although YouTube kind of does that, although you could also get banned. So, and I'm sure Twitch is similar for you. But
Yep.
so was the crunch part of the reason you switched to a normal software engineering job?
Um, I think it would be part of the reason why I was interested in staying there longer. There was a point that I had a unicorn game position pop up that was remote and it fit all my bills and was actually a networking position, which I was really interested in.
Mm,
And they were paying a whole lot more than I was getting at the time, which like everything was great, but I didn't take it because of two things. One is I wasn't convinced that the crunch was not going to be bad. At my software job, I had plenty of energy left to be able to work on my own games and then also still live a life. Like that was all
Yeah.
part of the life balance, and it was really important for me to maintain that life balance, even if I could make a whole lot more money, being able to work on my own games on the side and keep that energy was very important because otherwise I wouldn't be able to be doing this full-time thing now.
Yeah. So, I actually found it very difficult when I was working a 9 to 5 to actually just come home and do game development. Um, I- yeah, I'm not really sure how you do it, but I think it might help if I started in the morning, right?
It may help
Um,
to start in the morning. I definitely noticed for me personally, in the evening, they'd be hit and miss. Some evenings I would be able to work on stuff, and then some evenings I'd just sit there in front of the TV and and then go to sleep and wake up, go to work, come back, and the evening would be the hit or miss thing. But the TV in the evening would be like it sometimes it starts earlier and takes up the game dev, but even after game dev, I'd go on and turn on the TV and it would go later into the evening. So all I did
mm,
was trade basically my TV time for waking up earlier and doing my game dev, which was such a great trade-off. I wish I would have done that a lot sooner in life.
I'm trying to do it, but the whole waking up early thing is kind of hard, especially because like I've gone back and forth between working a full time job and being a student, and the schedule keeps switching up.
Yeah,
But
that definitely makes
I'm
it challenging. Once you have a more stable schedule, it might help out a little.
yeah I'm working towards it. But so do you find it particularly difficult to do both the job and game development on the side at the same time? Do you think you might find it easier because of the crunch time and stuff you went through before?
That might have something to do with it. I'm not 100% sure. I think a lot of it for me is I want to give my best to the things I want, and I really want uh, to be able to make my own games and to have money coming in to support me so I can continue
Yeah.
making my own games. Like that's been my dream again since I was in like high school. Um, so I think that's more the driving factor. Even when I was in the game industry, when it was a non-crunch period, I was able to still get back and have enough creative energy to keep working on my own stuff. Then it was a bit less than I was with software, but it was still there.
So I find that it's hard for me to work on large projects while working on a 9 to 5. Large projects are more intense because you're working on something bigger. There's less for fun things and more things that just kind of have to be done. And yeah, I can burn out I can burn out quickly doing this 60 plus hours per week if I'm doing a full time job at the same time. I don't think I've ever managed to live stream on a day that I also did a full day's work at my software engineering job. But I think it's largely a discipline issue for me. But do you have any recommendations for people with full time jobs that want to get into a productive indie game development cycle?
I think just setting aside the time that you have available and dedicating it to that, like you're always going to do what you want to do. And you just got to make sure that what you want to do is actually what you want to do. That may sound very confusing, but there are things that you want to do more than other things. Like I would like to make the music for my game. I would like to make the art for my game, and I would like to do all the coding and everything for the game. It
Yeah.
would be something I'd like to do. But I'm not going to put any effort into learning how to do the music because there's just not enough time to do everything. Um, to
Yeah.
extrapolate that to kind of a busy schedule, find those times that you are doing something you want to do, like maybe it's watching TV or a movie or such, and ask yourself if that is what you want to do more than building your own projects um, or something else you want to learn or whatever it might be. Like just find the time for you and then dedicate it for that purpose. I found that the mornings was the easiest place for me to put it. That was out of the way for my schedule. I did not like waking up in the morning. It was terribly hard, but it wound up being the best place for me, and it was a daily occurrence. Like every day, this is my dedicated time for my game dev block, and then after that, I go do my other things. And that really helped me was just having that daily block that this is my time to get stuff done.
So it's like half getting into a routine of doing it, and then half just like whenever you're doing something, like changing what you're doing in the day, just thinking about it for a moment and thinking, in the long term, is this really how I want to spend my time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you're now a full-time indie developer. What projects are you working on now, and what are your goals for the next 1 or 2 years?
The next 1 or 2 years is gonna be fun. I don't actually know that one yet, but right now I'm working on Rally of Rockets, which is
Yep.
actually one of my projects that I started way back in 2018 and actually wound up putting it on hold for a very long time. The return on investment just didn't seem to match what the project was. There was too much risk in building it out.
Yeah.
And so it's turned into a King of the Hill, capture the flag, tag. I'm not exactly sure what the game mode is going to be, but you're driving a rocket-powered car around arenas with a bunch of other people. It's an online multiplayer game,
So
and it's going to be coming as a launch title to a upcoming platform called Ultimate Games. So
yeah.
that's where things
So,
are kind of changing for me.
so it's kind of like mini games with rocket cars.
I don't know if it's
Or
gonna
is
be
it?
mini games. I think it's going to wind up finding one of those and holding on to it and really leaning in
Yeah.
deeply. Right now, I'm still trying to find where the game wants to take itself.
Well, you've got the audience to try that stuff out and see what works. But I think I actually participated in a couple of the like early tests when you implemented the networking.
Yep.
Uh, yeah. So is the next like 1 or 2 years just gonna look like building that out and then seeing what comes next? Like what opportunities pop up and stuff, or
Yeah, I think the next year I'm probably going to be popping out as many of the products as I can because I've got a couple already in my back pocket. Like Turbo Boom is, I'd say, at least 80% done, if not even 90% done. It just has a couple of things before I can release. I'm going to do another push on Eggcelerate
yeah.
um, for Easter in 2022, and that one will hopefully get some more attention there, as well as a couple other things that I have sort of either half started or as ideas. More long term than that, I'm going to be building a racing simulator, which is my dream project, magnum opus, and um, the one that I think I will make my indie adventure succeed when I get there.
Uh, so what do you think the optimal approach is for making an income in terms of like the scale of projects? Do you think it's a good idea to make a decent amount of small games, or do you think it's good to do bigger games, or do you think you should do smaller games and then lead into bigger games? Like, what do you think the approach is there for making money?
I think there's many different approaches. I've read a lot of postmortems, and this is how my indie adventure went, and a lot of failures, and I mean, there's been some successes, right? You got Minecraft, you got some other
Yeah,
things that just went big, and those are like lotteries, even better than lotteries, really. Um, I think it's really important to do your research on the type of game or genre you're making and make sure you're making it for an audience. And I say this, but I am a novice at this. This is something I'm still practicing day to day, and I'm trying to get better at it.
yeah,
The way I did it is I just went to Steam. I looked at all the racing games that come out every month and taking the reviews and some math that's out there on the web, you can find it. It's the box leader method, I think, that just multiplies the reviews by some number to give a very vague idea of what the game could have made. Um, and I started looking at these ballparks as what racing games are making. And obviously, you have your hits like Minecraft would be, but you also have more of them that don't even make any money at all. And what I did is I kind of looked at what's the average of these, which seems to be about $15,000 as an average ballpark. And I don't know how accurate that ballpark is, but what that tells me is I need to be able to build a racing game for less than that amount of cost to have any chance of it making money. Now, obviously, the more time you put into something, the better the features can be, or the more polish you can add to it. But just because your game has more polish and just because it has more features doesn't make it sell more.
Yeah.
So I would say the best path is to start with some smaller projects. Like really go with a couple months. Eggcelerate was a 3-month project from start to end for me. Granted, I did know how to make games when I jumped into that. It's not like I started
Yeah.
there from nothing. So don't think you're going to start from nothing and make a game in 3 months and sell it. But um, it it was a 3-month project and it taught me so much about the whole release cycle of something of my own. And the next game that I'm going to do, like I'm trying to make them in 3 to 4 months just to go through that cycle a few more times. And each time I go through that cycle, you can take things from the previous games and the next game can be a little bit bigger. The next game can be a little bit bigger. The next game gets so on and so on. And eventually you can get something that's actually getting really close to your magnum opus and going with a big product, right? Like you'll have your feature set that you want.
Yeah. I started with the first Steam release I did was a project that I only put in 100 hours into. My second one was 120. And then now I'm ramping it up to hopefully 300 hours or more for my next project. But part of the reason I'm able to keep those hours so low is because I use Python and it speeds up development quite a bit. But I feel like I've been pretty fortunate in terms of like I don't need to get massive sales. If I hit the average for games in my genres, I don't not quite average, like the doing well-ish category.
Yep.
I'm doing really well because of how fast I'm able to work on this stuff.
Right.
But a lot of
Keeping your time
yeah,
costs low brings in better profits even with lower sales. Like that's I
yeah,
think one of the things people need to pay a lot of attention to. Don't spend 4 years trying to make the perfect product. I mean, in the sense, yeah, it's your dream project. That's one thing. But if you are trying to do this as a business, that's unlikely to be the best method to go forward.
yeah. Um, Yeah, one of the things I've found is that, uh, or I don't know if I can say I found this. It's more like one of the beliefs that I'm kind of testing out is that it's really important. One of the most important things to do when designing a game is to figure out, at least commercially, is to figure out how you can structure the design of your game to make the overall content creation of it and just about everything as time efficient as possible to create the best experiences possible, rather than like just focusing on just the best experience or something like that.
Exactly.
So
There was a lot of things in Accelerate that I had to either cut, change, or just decide, yes, that's a great feature. I'd love to add it, or piece of content that I'd love to add, but it just doesn't make sense for the cost efficiency of it. Like it's not going to add enough
yeah,
value that I'm going to make enough sales to cover the cost of development.
yeah. Um, so what do you think the odds are of your job as a full-time indie developer being sustainable? It's kind of a hard question, but we have to
It's
look at it sometimes.
it's a really hard it's a hard one to answer. I mean, there's a number going around the internet that people throw around a lot that 95% of indies fail. And I don't disagree with this. There's like 95% of small businesses fail too.
Yeah,
But I also want to dig deeper into the word indies because I think when you're saying 95% of indies fail, you're also grouping in a whole bunch of people that are actually classifying themselves as a hobbyist. They're not trying to make money necessarily. Like they might be trying to sell their game in a sense of I've made this game and I'm put it on sale, and if it makes some money, that's great. But that's not doing it as a business. And to me, yes, you're an indie under some light of the word, but you're not doing it as a indie business. And I know that gets
Yeah.
to be blurry. I understand that the word indie is way overthrown, but I'm guessing my odds are closer to a 50-50. Um, I don't know if I'm biased on that.
Yeah.
I've put as much energy as I can into making the odds as good as I can.
I
Um, yeah,
I
that's
think the whole streaming thing you're doing helps a lot in getting you that consistency that you need to make it sustainable. So I think you probably do have some pretty good odds, and obviously you've got the work ethic as well.
yeah, streaming is giving me an audience to test the games out and feedback pretty instantly, building a community. There's a lot of things that streaming's given me, not only the focus and consistency and accountability that I was mentioning earlier in our conversation, but streaming does also provide some benefits with financial, right? Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
people on my stream that are supporting me through subscriptions and cheering bits and other donations and such. And I am aiming to make my money from game sales. Like that is my actual aim, but I'm not going to say no to other buckets of revenue either because
Yeah.
you need as much help as you can get. And while I'm certainly not floating yet. There's no way I'm covering my cost of living just yet. I am hopeful that by the time I run out of my runway, I will be able to do that.
Yeah. Both of us are, I think, in a situation where we get the majority of our revenue at the moment through our media presence rather than game sales, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's a good setup to have though, because it is a consistent income stream. It's a consistent marketing outlet, and like a lot of times people will have one success with an indie game and then they'll make another one and no one sees it. And even if it's good, if they made a mistake in their marketing or something, it can ruin their whole income stream. Whereas if you have an active media presence, it's a bit more reliable and forgiving, I feel like.
I'm certainly hoping that's truth. It does feel like my stream has kind of plateaued a little bit. Um, it had very consistent growth for like the first 2.5 years, and I'm feeling like I've kind of peaked at this plateau where I've stayed at 40 to 50 viewers pretty much nonstop for the last 2 years or so, where it it's a challenge to climb. I am trying to grow it still. I don't aim to look at numbers. Like that is not something
Yeah.
I do. I'm not sitting there looking at the viewer count being like, oh, that needs to be 1,000. I'm going too low. Like that's not what I'm talking about here. But I am seeing that there's a plateau there that I that tells you something, right? Like it should kind of slowly and over time continue to grow up, even if it's just a trickle. That's the right direction. Staying flat isn't quite the right direction. So that's really what I'm looking at when I talk about these numbers. And I mean, I'm happy with my viewer count. It's just liking to see if we can't start nudging that back up a little and putting some focus there.
Yeah. I'm in another situation right now where I'm actually my live stream viewer count is going in the opposite direction. I peaked, I think, during the last Alka Jam I participated in, where I had almost 200 viewers, and I would around that time get about 100, and now I'm back down to about 50 on average. But yeah, it's an interesting relationship we have to have with the statistics, because it is part of our business, and we need those numbers to be decent from a marketing perspective for our games, at least.
Right, it's just a little heartbeat that tells you what's going
Yeah.
on, and watching it not increase at a rate that it had been is it's just a heartbeat. That's all it is. It's not something like you really care too much about it as far as like it affects you, but it just lets you know where things are at.
Yeah. So we both haven't really released big games onto Steam yet, and I think that's a large reason of why we get most of our income through our media presence rather than through our game sales. And ideally, that'll change soon. Well, hopefully not in the wrong way where it just drops to nothing.
Yeah,
But
indeed.
uh, yeah. So how does your media presence like how do you plan for that to play into your plan for your full-time indie development cycle, and like as a
Um,
form of income and promotion, like what are you expecting from it in the long term? Are you expecting to that be your main marketing source, or are you expecting to do other stuff?
okay, so there's multiple parts here. I'm going to answer probably
Yeah,
a
sorry.
question that you didn't quite ask. I don't feel that my YouTube presence or my Twitch presence is a marketing tool. Now,
Okay.
obviously, it is to a degree, but the reason I don't feel that this is a marketing tool for me is because I'm talking to game developers. I'm talking to, I think, people that are into your channel are game developers as well. They're, yes, game developers, we play games. And
Yeah.
um hopefully some of you guys like some racing games too, right? Like, so this does, yes, help some marketing to a degree, but my target audience are players of racing games. And so
Yeah.
while let's just call it 10% of game developers like racing games and will go out and buy a game, and that number is that drastically higher than it probably actually is. I'm just using some raw numbers. Um, Whereas if I go somewhere else, some other market, or I make a YouTube channel that's specific to people playing racing games, like I'm playing racing games myself and giving people that content, that would be marketing to me because then you're talking to that audience that likes racing games where out of your 1,000 subscribers, 900 of them are probably going to want to go buy a racing game, right? Like
Yeah.
90% of that audience wants it. So I don't really look at my streaming or my game dev efforts as a marketing tool, but I did look at my YouTube as a let's learn the tools of marketing. Let's
Mm.
learn how to speak to a camera and learn how to talk to the target audience. In that particular case, it was game developers. And I think I did fairly good at improving how to talk to you guys and deliver messages that the audience cares about and editing videos and all of this stuff. That's what it taught me. And I'm going to use that to, as I was saying, build a second YouTube channel that is going to be targeting racing fans because that will be a marketing tool at that point. For my Twitch efforts, I feel that is um, a little selfish, if I'm honest, but it gives me that accountability and that focus that I actually, for some reason, don't necessarily have when I'm not streaming. Like,
Mm.
I press start streaming, I am in a zone that this is we're doing something. And
Yeah.
um so that's a little bit selfish of me on that, but other people do get a lot from that. They get to live the indie lifestyle through me. Some people watch, like kind of listen along as they're at work or in the car or whatever. They just listen along to the stream or just watching in places that they can't necessarily follow my steps themselves, and they get to kind of live through me, the adventure, right?
Yeah.
As well as some people get motivated to start their own games or learn something new or try something, and that's all things that I give back kind of without meaning to, but I do enjoy giving that back. It's just, yeah, streaming for me is more about the focus and accountability. And final piece on this, I think, was the financial bit that comes from streaming or the media sources. I mean, I've never made a penny off YouTube yet, but um, so any of that money that comes from that, the way I'm seeing that with my adventure is helping me cover expenses more than what I've already got covered from my runway. I think eventually I'll start putting some of that money back into my runway too, but as of right now, I have 3 or 4 years that if I made nothing on any media source or any game sales or anything, I am okay living for 3 to 4 years. Um, and so that's my outlook on that is I don't expect anything from my presence, and what extra does come in will go back into my games, the stream, the company that I'm building to make racing games. Like that is the purpose of all of that.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool perspective on that. I've definitely been seeing it as largely a marketing perspective. I feel like, yeah, well, you're right that not all of your audience is going to be interested in the game you make and want to get it. A lot of them, what was I gonna say?
A lot of them want to support you, and
Yeah,
many will still get it anyway. Um, I
but
definitely see that there is some marketing to it. I just don't view it as marketing. And I think in talking to other game developers, I just want them to be aware that trying to make a YouTube channel and talking about your project or devlog or such, yes, you're going to attract some people, and yes, you may get some sales from that. That can technically be a marketing tool, but just ask yourself how effective of a tool it's being, I guess, is the message I want to convey there. Like,
yeah.
is it the most effective way to spend your time in the marketing thing?
But another thing is that it for me, the perspective I've had is also that it's kind of a starting point. So it'll get some eyes on your game,
Yep.
and you're at least pretty much guaranteed to not be unseen, which is nice to have.
It was definitely because I was streaming that Accelerate got where it did on Steam. And it didn't go big numbers. Don't know by any means it has not made money back or anything, but it has exceeded my expectations, and that happened because I had a community already there and wanting to
Yeah,
support me.
yeah.
Like I do
So
not fool myself that any other marketing thing helped there. It was all the community.
yeah. So I've seen you. I've seen that you've been practicing your art skills, but you also don't hesitate to hire other people to help with your projects. Um, I currently have the preference of working entirely solo on my projects for the creative freedom. What aspects of game development are you looking to do yourself, and what do you plan on hiring people for?
Um, I plan on doing stuff myself when I can and when the quality is going to hit the quality of the particular project that I'm aiming at. Some projects might have a bit of a higher bar than others, just naturally how budgets work and everything. But when I can do the art in well enough of a quality that it works, like Accelerate was, I'd say 80% my art. I had hired
Mm,
out a little bit of help to just add up some spice and make some additional stuff that went a little over the top that kind of pushed the game a little further on the quality bar. Um, so I kind of want to do as much as I can, just sort of save the money. But I think that's the way I look at it is the money worth spending for the quality and or saving my time? Because if hiring somebody else can actually save me time, that's actually saving money in the end. Um, I mean, you just have to do the math to figure out what your time cost is and
yeah,
check that all out. But that's, I think, where I draw the line more so than just saying things I want versus things I should hire out.
yeah. For me, since uh, I'm going in and out of being a student, I've definitely I'm in a bit of a more of a learning mindset right now. So I'm happy to try and learn all of the different aspects, which is part of what plays into why I prefer to be solo. Um, But in your case, are you considering possibly expanding into a studio with employees, or are you aiming to like do it most yourself with contractors?
I mean, if in the best case scenario, I'd like a couple employees for sure. I think that is kind of a dream at this particular moment, but
Yeah.
you know, like once I can effectively sustain myself fairly well at this and keep working with contractors and I'm actually starting to make something that there's an extra there, then I can start looking into is this enough money regularly to hire somebody and not have to worry about saying, "Hey, I can't quite pay you anymore, so we got to let you go." Like that,
Yeah.
I think is the scariest thing for me is not being able, like if you're employing somebody, they are dependent on you and you need to be there for that, right?
Yeah. Um, one more thing I wanted to go over was you've been building your own game engine for quite a while now, which is something I don't think I could see myself doing. Is that an experience that you would recommend that most people that are interested in the coding side of game development might want to take a look at? Or
I'd say it depends on how much in the coding side, but um I think if you're asking this question, you should generally shy to using an engine. Because if you're asking this question, you probably don't know enough. I don't want to use it like you don't know enough that way, but you probably y- you're you're probably not quite at the level that you should be making that sort of choice to jump into your own engine.
yeah,
There's something like go ahead and try making some pieces of an engine or something and see how that feels to you. But making your own engine is an enormous
yep,
time cost, and it should not be underestimated. I've even kind of contemplated a couple times, like, is this idea and picture that I have with my own engine, is it worth the time cost that I'm doing? Is this actually hurting my adventure? And I go back and forth on this a lot, but I think in the long term, it really is a beneficial thing. I get complete ownership of my code. Like that
yep,
is mine. Nobody can take that away from me. I get complete control of my code. I get to choose how something works, and if it doesn't work the way I want to, well, first I'm the one to blame, and I can change it. And those are all my decisions. If there's a bug, I can go in and fix it. I can't stress that last one enough. If there's a bug, I can go in and fix it. Do you know what
yeah,
stuff I dealt with in Unity on Eggcelerate? I took a week to deal with input. Like, I would have been better off. I'm no joke here. I would have been better off writing my own input layer for Unity than doing what I did on that week. But and I know people are going to say, just go use an open source engine where you can go touch the code and then you can go fix the bug. That's great until you realize that just making a change does something else somewhere down the line that you weren't aware it was going to do.
yeah,
Um, and let's say you actually got that thing fixed, right? You fixed the bug. Just because you fixed it doesn't mean that that engine is going to accept your pull request. And so when you want to go update to the new version, you have to first pull the new version and then go re-implement your code fix. Like
yep,
there's a lot of headache there too. And I may be making it sound like engines are bad, but they're really not. They save you so much time.
yep,
Um, you don't you don't have to go write all the technology just to test something. I would highly recommend, even if you're building your own engine, jump in Unity, jump in Unreal, jump in one of the other big engines and go prototype your idea. Is it fun? Like, don't go build your engine and then build your game and be like, that wasn't a fun idea. That's you're gonna waste so much time doing that. And maybe you realize that you don't need an engine for it.
yeah. I'm on the sort of I don't know if I'm on the other end or in the middle or what, but I tend to prefer working on a lower level without engines, but I'm also not interested in making my own engine. I prefer to just kind of work with some frameworks and make exactly what I need to get what I'm trying to do done, instead of creating the broader functionality that goes with an engine. So I feel like there's a bunch of ways to approach game development there, which is pretty interesting. So many studios have their own in-house engines and frameworks that they use. How do you see your game engine aiding your development in the long run?
Basically, I see it being a tool set that evolves over time to allow me to make racing games as quickly as possible.
Mm,
Um, that is my focus, is racing games. Yes, I do like other types of games, but I think in doing this as a business, I need to choose one like genre, one thing to go after so that I can build off it each time and get faster and faster. And um, I think part of what some people don't realize is building the engine is interesting to me. And
yeah,
where I could get something done faster in Unity on a technical basis, it would get done faster. It might not keep my interest quite as much as, hey, let me go spend a day doing this pretty low level fun thing that, okay, my interest is high, but yes, I did spend a whole day. And there's a certain balance there that um, is pretty stressful from the business point, especially when I've gone full time. I've been thinking about that a lot. But I think I also minimize this more than people think. Like, I think I've been tracking my time since 2018, and I track what projects I put time into. And I even have what I call a sub project on it. So if I'm working on Rally of Rockets, but I'm actually doing a task that is some engine work for that game, I also label it as engine work. So I can go back and tally up how much hours were in a game and how many of those hours were engine work for that game. And
yeah,
I'm staying in the 10 to 15% engine work, which you got to remember helps all of the future games.
yep,
So I think that is a fair ratio. I think going something like 50% engine work, 50% game would be a terrible way to go, but it's just kind of pay attention to it, and I hope that's the best I've got.
yeah. All right. So thank you for joining me. That's pretty much it. We've gone for almost an hour now. I apologize. We actually went a little bit over from the time frame I gave you, but
No
uh,
worries.
uh, if you want now, you can shout out your stuff again for anyone watching.
Yeah, so I've made Eggcelerate for Steam, and I also do streaming on twitch.tv/TimBaudet, where I make racing games as a business and motivate and inspire other game developers to chase their dreams and know the risks involved so I've done some things on YouTube, although I think that channel is coming to kind of a sunset at this particular point
Hmm.
in time, but there may be a couple other videos here and there. So go check out my stream, and I hope to see you there.
Yeah, I'll add some links into the description for this video. Thank you for watching, everyone. Hopefully, I'll see you guys in the next video.